With DC and Marvel continuing to push to be the only game in town when it comes to big-budgeted theatrical comic book adaptations, there's been a noticeable rise in recent years in the number of indie comics that are being adapted into television series, be it on cable networks, streaming platforms, and on regular broadcast channels. A lot of this can almost undoubtedly be traced back to AMC's The Walking Dead. Based on the comic written by Robert Kirkman, the series certainly made an impact, breathing new life into the zombie genre and giving rise to the ever-increasing number of indie comic adaptations on the small screen. Shows like Deadly Class, Preacher, Happy, The Umbrella Academy, and The Chilling Adventures of Sabrina are drawing in considerable audiences and getting a fair amount of praise heaped upon them. So it got me thinking about a few indie comic book titles that I would love to see adapted to television. American Vampire. It's been a while since we had a decent, honest-to-God vampire series, in my opinion, and I feel like American Vampire would definitely fit the bill. Written by Scott Snyder and drawn by Raphael Albuquerque, the comic deals with the rise of the American vampire as a subspecies amongst vampires at large who first came about in the late 1800s. The first volume of the comic, co-written by Stephen King, follows two such members of this subspecies, Skinner Sweet, who was turned in the Old West, and Pearl Jones, an aspiring actress turned by Skinner in the 1920s after being offered as a meal to older European vampires who had previously immigrated to the United States. I actually feel like the team behind The Walking Dead, most notably original series showrunner Frank Darabont, would be perfect for a concept like American Vampire, and I feel like there's a lot that could be done with the passage of time from series to series, as Pearl and Skinner's exploits actually went into the 1960s as far as the comics are concerned. Renato Jones, the 1%. In the near future, where 1% of the population controls 50% of all the wealth in the world, there are sure to be a sickeningly high number of people suffering for that 1%'s comfort and greed. And the greatest secret weapon of a psychotic vigilante named Renato Jones out to make them pay for their crimes, he's actually one of them. This property feeds perfectly into the general public's continued frustration with the Trump administration, and it's never been particularly subtle in the parallels it draws. Much like Deadly Class and Happy, Renato Jones' The 1% would be right at home with sci-fi, given their approach to absurdist action and violence. Sci-fi even has a pre-existing relationship with Renato Jones' creator Kari Andrews, who has directed several episodes for their series Aftermath and Van Helsing. Vessel. Part of Vessel's concept definitely covers familiar territory within the genre of science fiction, especially the idea of being able to transfer one's consciousness into a different body. But creator Enrique Carrion definitely flips the concept on its ear. Vessel follows agent Mauricio Barrino as he's tasked with protecting high-profile clients looking to do body swaps to escape external threats. But that's just the half of it. Fairy partners used as ammunition for weapons, angels, hell dimensions. This comic gets weirder than you might expect, and maybe even too weird for live action. But if the recent animated Netflix anthology series Love, Death, and Robots has taught us anything, it's that you can get plenty weird when you push the medium of animation to its extremes. Queen and Country. Created by crime fiction master Greg Rucka, Queen and Country follows intelligence operative Tara Chase as she carries out various missions on behalf of the Special Operations Section of MI6. Imagine combining the bureaucratic drama of Homeland with the action of Strike Back, and you've essentially got Queen and Country. Now, there's been talk of a film adaptation for years, and even Ridley Scott has been in talks to direct as recently as last year. But there's been no real movement on the project, and maybe that's because it'd be better suited as an episodic series. American Virgin. As networks and streaming platforms continue to address and rectify the overall lack of LGBTQ and sex-positive representation, it occurs to me that a comic like American Virgin would be a near-perfect property to adapt as a series. Barely out of his teens, born-again Christian preacher Adam Chamberlain has vowed to remain abstinent until marriage. But after the woman he believed God had chosen to be his wife is murdered, Adam finds himself on one misadventure after another that tests his faith, exposing him to everything from homosexuality, bisexuality, gender fluidity, the transgender community in general, and BDSM. I can almost see American Virgin being a show that would end up on a network like the CW, if not for the fact that its globe-trotting nature would probably make it a challenge for the location scouts that would only be looking at Vancouver for places to shoot. Motor Crush. Another show that might work best in animation, Motor Crush takes place in the near future where motorcycle racer Domino Swift rides for an official racing league in her professional life, but also secretly races illegally amongst urban street gangs to win a narcotic fuel additive known as Crush that's meant to be only used for vehicles, but Domino needs to ingest it for her own survival. Capturing the visual essence of a property in live action for television would be a dicey proposition, but even as expensive as animation may be, it's probably the best option for this particular property, especially considering how well co-creator Babs Tarr's art style lends itself to animation to begin with. Who would I cast as the voice of Domino Swift, you may ask? I'll give you 3 guesses, and they're all Cree Summer.